Hello and happy Halloween. We have some spoilers for you here from Commander Legends. This set is coming up pretty fast. In a couple of weeks, we're going to be seeing how this actually plays out. But for now, let's take a look at the cards and kind of speculate. We've got Elegeth Crossroads Augur, a 6 casting cost 5/6 flyer. And if you would scry a number of cards, you draw that many cards instead with partner. I'm not going to lie, I expect this card to be a lot of fun for people. A lot of times, cards have scry tacked onto them to kind of make up for a drawback, like the temples, for example, and now that ends up being even more of a bonus. So, I mean, that you could certainly do a lot worse, and when we're talking about doing a limited format for Commander, I suspect this will actually work out pretty well. You've got a 5/6 flyer for 6 that you can keep pulling back from the command zone, and you're going to actually be able to build a deck around this card, and worst case, just win with it. Myriad Landscape, another reprint of this. I suppose this is noteworthy because there's probably going to be some fancy versions of it. This is a card that sees play in lots of Commander decks, and would be good in an experimental format that we were musing about over on the Discord, a lands-only format. I actually think this could be highly playable in a lands-only format. I don't even know what that would look like at this point. It would be pretty difficult to win with a Merit Lage when you're facing down wastelands and strip mines, ghost quarters. Like, there's a lot of lands that kill lands. So, anyways, this one is the one that you get to scry whenever you play creatures of the chosen type. So it's going to help fix your mana. Path of Ancestry, something like that. Let me see if I got the name. Yeah, Path of Ancestry. So it does enter the battlefield tapped, and you can get one of any color in your commander's color identity. And when that mana is spent on a creature that shares a creature type with your commander, you scry 1. So something that you don't see for like constructed magic, but certainly in Commander you see a whole lot of it. Preordain. This is a pretty brutal reprint. This card was actually worth something, and it's going in this set as a common. I mean, I would have liked to see it be an uncommon at least. I just feel like this is going to wipe out the value of this card in at least the short term. We'll see what happens long term, but I mean, it feels bad to me when you've got new players and you're convincing them that they need to be buying singles, and you know they've already bought their Preordains. It feels bad when they get absolutely gutted. Pauper is one of my favorite formats, but when there are cards in it that people do need to spend a little bit of money on, I do hate to see those just get absolutely crushed. Most recently, they did like Chromatic Star or Sphere, whichever one that was. The one that you sacrifice to draw a card and get some mana. That's just disappointing to me. I just don't see it as much of an upside. The cards are available. They can be found. Maybe that's because I've always been able to do that for people, to get them the cards that they actually need, that they're not actually like not playing the game for lack of availability. There's just a cost associated with it. Let's see here. We have Omen Speaker, the 1/3 scry 2 when it enters the battlefild. This one was playable in limited the last time it was around. Certainly good with that Sphinx. Some type of like Laboratory Servant, something like that. 3 in a blue for a 3/4, and during your the end of turn, you draw a card. If you've cast a creature from your graveyard or cast a spell from your graveyard, or if a activated ability has been used from your graveyard. So basically, if things are coming back from your graveyard, you're getting extra cards. A little bit of an upside there. Ludwig, all of these Commander 2016 cards getting reprinted, their value is going to just be absolutely hatcheted, I would imagine. Commander 2016 had really grown into a pretty valuable product. Now this guy, I mean, he probably was only like $5-10, but still, actually, he's mythic. Yeah, maybe he'll be okay. Probably not. He's probably going to take a beating. I think we can expect pretty much all of the cards in this set, depending on the size of the print run. We could really see a pretty significant amount of this product opened. I think there's so much hype around some of these cards that we'll get to later that I think this is going to be an all-out frenzy. I have no idea what the price of boxes is going to be. I was just told my allocation numbers. It is minimal. I think I'm only getting like, I want to say 15 boxes or something. It's abysmal. It's absolutely abysmal for the pre-release weekend. There's no pre-release kits either, so I just don't get it. I would have liked to have seen them do pre-release kits and like a whole traditional rollout, or at least have more product available. My suspicion is we're going to have some pretty inflated prices, and I'm fine with products being expensive as long as they stay expensive. I am not a big fan of, like, right now with Jumpstart at $10 a pack. It's like, it has to be $10 a pack. Otherwise, I'm just going to open the packs and sell the singles. Like, I'm not going to sell packs at a price where I'd make more money selling the singles that are in the packs. But it also doesn't feel great for people that are, kind of trying to be careful with their money, let's say. Like, it is not the financially best play. You are paying for the experience of getting the cards at a time when there is a shortage. So it's a different experience, and if you're fine with that, that's great. But for people that don't necessarily understand those dynamics, that can be a bit of a disaster when you're, spending a lot of money on something that you can get later for cheaper. You may not have actually understood that situation, because it's not like there's a user manual out there that everybody gets. It takes a while for people to gain the level of sophistication to really understand the market. And, honestly, there are a lot of people that have been around the game for a very long time, and they still, they come to completely different conclusions than me, for example. Patron of the Valiant here, 3 and 2 white for a 4/4 Sarah Angel stats. When it enters the battlefield, you put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it. So definitely helps the populate cause, totally playable for limited. Kelith, Sun Main Familiar, 1 and a white for a 1/1. Whenever a commander you control attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on it. This is going to be a legendary horse commander. Could be fine to get out of your command zone, especially early. Hunter's Insight, reprint here. Choose a creature you control. Whenever that creature deals damage to a player or planeswalker this turn, you draw that many cards. I think that was that like M11 or something? I think this had like a wolf on it previously. I might be thinking of a different card. Court of Grace, 2 and 2 white. When it enters the battlefield, you become the monarch. At the beginning of your upkeep, create a 1/1 white spirit token with flying. If you're the monarch, you create a 4/4 angel instead. So, I mean, this is, if you can stay monarch for a turn, you're going to start spitting out 4/4s, which is pretty fierce. Now, with the amount of monarch cards in the format, I actually think Monarch's going to change hands more often from cards that just make you the Monarch compared to the combat damage being dealt. And that's something to keep in mind. A lot of the time when we play Monarch cards in Limited, or in Constructed, I should say, the only way that they're getting it back is by hitting you. So it's not often where your opponent has Monarch cards as well for many of the Constructed formats. When Death and Taxes plays a Palace Jailer against some control deck, it's not like the control deck has their own Palace Jailers to steal the Monarch back. So probably going to be a little bit of a premium, even more so with Monarch, in that not only can you become the Monarch, but you can also stop your opponent from being the Monarch, which is kind of two separate things. It's nice to become the Monarch. That's great. It's an advantage, potentially, if you can hold on to it, of course. But stopping your opponent from being the Monarch is pretty freaking important, because they're going to just run away with the game if they're able to outdraw everyone 2-1. Court of Ambition, 2 and a black. Again, you become the Monarch, and this time at the beginning of your upkeep, each opponent loses 3 life unless they discard a card, but if you're the Monarch, they instead lose 6 life unless they discard 2 cards. So that is not going to make any friends at the table. It is a potential victory condition. Unless they discard 2 cards does mean that they have to have 2 cards to discard, so you can't say, I'm choosing to discard 2 cards instead of taking 6, even if you're hellbent. So that card's probably going to do 6 damage at a clip. People likely to hold on to their cards and just take some damage. Though, eventually, that card will we'll get them. So it's probably going to end some games. Belby's Corrupted Observer. All right. Little zombie elf throwback here. At the beginning of each player's post-combat main phase, that player adds 2 colorless for each of your opponents who lost life this turn. That card is very interesting. Legendary creature, black and green. And I think the only thing I'm not super psyched about with this commander format is you can't splash like you can in regular limited formats, which is one of the more tempting things in Sealed in general. Is sometimes you get a card, it's like one red card, and you're like, oh, do I splash for this single copy of Fireball? That is actually not going to be legal in this format. You're going to have your commander colors, and that's that. No going outside of it. Archon of Coronation, 4 and 2 white for a 5/5 flyer. When it enters the battlefield, you become the monarch, and as long as you are the monarch, damage doesn't cause you to lose life. Wow. Wow. All right. That is pretty impressive. I'm just thinking about the rules interactions there. That is a really interesting Magic card right there. I think people are going to like that one a lot. Yeah, 5/5 flyer. So let's see. You're the monarch. Damage doesn't cause you to lose life. Yep, no, I think people will like this one. I actually just read up on the rules of Monarch. So basically, if a creature you control deals damage to the monarch, you get to become the monarch. Also, you can become the monarch by playing a card that says you become the monarch. And also, if a player who is the monarch leaves the game, then the active player becomes the monarch. So I actually I don't think I knew about that one. It makes sense. I mean, once the monarch starts, somebody's got to be the monarch. That's just a hot potato that get passed around once you open that Pandora's box, to mix metaphors. Zur the Enchanter, reprint here, and looking kind of zombie-ish, kind of White Walker-esque. I don't know if this is new art or not. I guess the original Zur, I feel, was like a goofy looking card. I don't know if they've reprinted him in between with this art, but this is one of the fiercer commanders. I mean, once people started building commander decks to try to make them as good as possible, this is one of the cards that started seeing a lot of play in my area. There's a lot of things you can get here. I mean, Necropotence right off the top, but I mean, there's a ton of them, and he is very, very dangerous left unchecked. Rograth, Son of Roga. I love this card. This is super fun. 0 casting costs, commander, first strike, menace, trample. None of those matter when you have 0 power. So that's a lot of fun. And it's a really cool card. Everything about it, the flavor text, the art, I love it. I actually like this card. I liked kobolds back in the day. They were a puzzle, a silly kind of challenge to deck builders of like, how the heck could you make this actually useful? It's such a garbage card. The art was ridiculous, and now this guy is probably going to be pretty happy to pick up some type of equipment or enchantments. And as a partner, hopefully he's got a decent partner to go along with him. But this one's a lot of fun. I'm glad it's uncommon. It's going to be pretty easy to have that be an option for your commander. This guy, let's see if we have a name for him. So he's a 2/2 weaponsmith of sorts. Yeah, the Togo Goblin Weaponsmith is perhaps going to be his name. We'll see what it actually translates out to. But whenever land enters the battlefield under your control, you get a artifact equipment named Rock. And it has equipped creature, has pay 1, sacrifice Rock. It does 2 damage to any target, and it equips for 1. So basically you can pay 2 to do 2 damage to something anytime you're getting a land. That is just a really fun card. The idea of a weaponsmith being somebody that just picks up a rock off the ground and is just next leveling everybody with this incredible technology of hurling a rock at your opponent's face. I mean, that's very Goblin, flavor, and I like it. It's got the lightning bolts in the background with him holding up the rock like he's some type of genius for thinking this up. A couple of flavor wins there. The kobold and this goblin I am on board with. We've got not a Wheel of Fortune reprint, but this is pretty good. I mean, Wheel of Misfortune, it's a sorcery for the same casting cost of the original Wheel of Fortune. So Wheel of Misfortune reads, each player secretly chooses a number, and then those numbers are revealed. Wheel of Misfortune deals damage equal to the greatest number to the chosen player, and then each player who didn't choose the minimum number discards their hand and draws 7 cards. So at a table, we're going to have a Wheel of Fortune for 7 players. Everybody except the person who picked the lowest the lowest amount of damage to take. And then the person who picked the most takes damage, but they are still getting the 7 cards. So that's a fun, interesting design, little game within the game. And I'm on board. I think it's a cool card. We'll see. We'll see how Commander players feel about it. I personally like Wheel of Fortune and Time Twister, and this one definitely has a drawback, and it's not obvious what number you should name. It's really not. Like, you do not want to be the person not drawing the cards, in all likelihood, and you would like it if the person casting the card doesn't get any cards. So what do you go with? I don't know. There's going to be some real game theory involved in sorting that out. You got 40 life to play with, depending on the types of decks. I mean, we could see some really high numbers bid, but you don't want to be the one that bids the most. You just want to not be last, and that's a really fun sub game to me. Negela, a reprint here. She's one of the more cutthroat commanders. Wooburg, even though her casting cost is only red, that Wooburg in her text box means you're going to have access to every color in Magic, and she just creates a ton of infinite loops with things like Sword of Feast and Famine. I think Bear Umbra. There's a bunch of things that whenever she deals damage, you get to untap your lands, and then that allows you to create more attack steps and just go completely infinite there. Fleshbag Marauder, 2 and a black for a 3/1. When it enters the battlefield, each player sacrifices a creature. This card's been around for quite a while. I think this might be a downshift, though, at common. I feel like it was an uncommon before. So if so, this could easily be a card that sees some play in Pauper. There's some Aristocrats-style decks that might be very happy with that. Mortician Beetle is likely going to be best friends with this guy in Pauper. Arcane Signet, notable because we're getting some fancy printings of this. We're going to have presumably foil showcase versions of this pretty much Commander staple at this point. This card, I'm not sure what they're thinking in terms of how many they're printing versus what the card's going to end up being worth. I mean, I'm guessing it's going to end up being like a $5 card when all is said and done, but maybe not. Maybe it'll be way lower. It's really going to depend on the print run, which we have no idea so far. I mean, there's some whispers out there that I'm hearing, but I don't know anything concrete about how much of this product that they're going to be making. Sweet Gum Recluse, 6 mana, 0/3, flying with flash, not flying. It does have reach, so it can block flyers. Cascade, and then when it enters the battlefield, you put 3 +1/+1 counters on each of any number of target creatures that entered the battlefield this turn. So she can get 3 +1/+1 counters. Any of your other creatures can get +1/+1 counters. And that cascade is actually going to trigger when you play it, so that whatever you cascade into is going to get the counters if it's a creature. So, I mean, that's an interesting card. Probably best that it's not legendary. That would actually be pretty brutal coming out of the command zone. At instant speed, potentially bringing reinforcements, but that's going to be, I think, a pretty solid card overall. Kolfner, The Last You, get to see more of this card. We've got the Murmuring Bosk mana here. Abzan, I guess it's called. Vigilance Reach for a 3/7 for 6. And whenever Kolfner or another creature you control dies, return one other target creature with target creature card with lesser toughness from your graveyard to your hand. So you have the option, whenever one of your creature dies, to get a weaker creature or a less tough creature out of the graveyard, which can give you some real resiliency. This is a legendary creature, so you can have 3 of your colors locked up by having him. And I suspect he'll be one of the commanders you would not be upset about having access to. Slash the ranks, 3 and 2 white to destroy all creatures and planeswalkers except for commanders. That's a very interesting card for decks that are really all in on their commander. I would not be surprised for them to sleeve that up for your kitchen table magic, and for just regular pre-release weekend, whatever that's going to look like. It's likely a fine card. Now, here's a printing to get a little excited about. Staff of Domination. This right now is a pretty expensive Magic card, and it's being reprinted at rare, which is shocking to me. Like, absolutely shocking. Staff of Domination, I think at one point was like a $100 card. Let's see here. So it is currently $50. The Masterpiece still sitting at over 100, but the Fifth Dawn one is currently $50, and this one's pre-ordering at a fraction of that. So I'm just surprised it wasn't reprinted as a Mythic. I don't think it would have been an objectionable thing. So I am actually surprised that they went with this at rare. Probably sell a lot of packs, but we're going to see, of course, the value of that significantly lower. So we'll see how low it ends up going. It was originally in Fifth Dawn, which was not the biggest print run compared to modern standards. We've got Sky Diamond here, notable mostly because they're potentially playable in Pauper. I don't know if they're going to be any good in Pauper. Difficult for me to picture a time where you're happy casting this card, but it's an option. Jeweled Lotus, this is one of the ones that everybody's talking about. You get the 0 casting cost, sacrifice to add 3 mana of any color to only be casting your commander. So can't use the activated abilities of your commander, which is pretty relevant. And people are flipping out. This card is pre-ordering for huge money. I don't know what this is going to end up being worth. It's difficult to say. You can try and like logic it out and think about cards like Mox Amber, which have been somewhat similar in terms of dealing with a really severe drawback, which could be fine for Commander. But if you take something like a Mox Amber, which is probably $15-$20, and you compare that to like Mox Opal, it's worth a fraction of that. Problem is, you can't really compare this to any other card to get your baseline. Like, what are you going to compare this to, like Lion's Eye Diamond or Black Lotus? I mean, there's not really another card that fits the bill to try and draw some comparison. Not that that's the best way to think about these things. At the end of the day, it's a Mythic. It's going to be in 1 out of every 121 packs in all likelihood, based off of the regular rare and Mythic sheets, and we'll see. We can take a look when this is all said and done and see if it's the regular amount of rares and Mythics. But that's typically how rares and Mythics work, is it's 121 cards on a rare sheet, and then that's cut up and just put into packs. So if there's 1 of each Mythic and then 2 of each rare per rare sheet, and that means basically if you open up 121 packs with perfect distribution, you get 1 of each Mythic and 2 of each rare. So it's kind of difficult for this card to be worth a crazy amount, given just like the raw numbers. But we'll see. It seems really, really difficult for a Mythic to be worth the types of prices that we're seeing right now. I do think there's going to be some commanders which are incredibly good with this. When you're talking about something that you need Wooburg after, and you kind of like Jelvala or whatever her name is that we just covered, the one that's 2 and a red that has Wooburg and the activated ability, she's not going to really take as much advantage of this in terms of compared to commanders that can just win the game when cast. So we'll see. The floating mana, like, you do need the proper requirements. So like if you had something like Azure, you're only getting 2 mana out of this. You're going to do like the colorless and either the white, blue, black. You can't be paying for anything else there. It's all of one color. So there's going to be some commanders which are going to benefit greatly from this card. like Marlin, the one that turns every draw step into a tutor. Yeah, it's really good with that card in all likelihood. So, I don't know. I do think that the rules committee should be mindful of kind of some basic human tendencies when it comes to being accused of something. So, the Walking Dead fiasco, the aftermath online, a lot of people accuse the rule committee of kind of bowing down to wizards, not really truly being an independent entity. And I think that was totally unfounded, but those things were said. And when somebody's accused of something, there is a kind of natural tendency to want to disprove it later through your actions when like it's just like a tendency where you kind of instinctually want to do it. Like if somebody is accusing you of just bowing down to wizards, the next chance that you get to kind of demonstrate your independence, psychologically, a lot of people would just have a tendency to do that. So I would not be shocked if this card ends up getting banned. I don't think it needs to. I don't know that it's actually going to be that much of a problem outside of like CEDH, which honestly, CEDH might end up just needing its own list at some point. I mean, that could totally be a thing. It's difficult to say. I mean, it's a whole complicated system. I think CEDH players, for the most part, are like, they're not, for the most part, tournament players. Like, it's a good thing it's not a Pro Tour format because it would look very, very different. And I could go on about the mentality behind CEDH. I think it's probably not a nice way to put it, but in general, it's for people that want to feel competitive and play at being competitive. It's not quite like actually competitive. It's the illusion of competition. It's like that's like karate versus MMA. Like, they both have purposes and they both can bring a lot of joy to people's lives, but like, if you take the person that's been doing karate their whole life and you put them in with somebody that does MMA, it's like, oh, well, you were playing at fighting, and then this person actually does fight every day out on the mat. Like, it's a different thing. So CEDH is kind of like the karate aspect, where it's like, it looks like competitive, but it's not actually. Like, you're not actually playing for big prizes, and it's just a different dynamic. So yeah, maybe I'll do a video on that, but that's my general kind of take on CEDH. Is it's a fun thing for people to do that want to feel competitive, and we don't really necessarily want to rob people of that. It's not really helping anybody to take somebody and like explain to them that they're not actually being competitive, and like if they were playing against like really like high caliber decks and players, it would be a different outcome. But that's just what I kind of feel about this card. It's probably going to be really good in CEDH. There's a bunch of commanders where this would be incredibly strong because they're very linear strategies that need to cast the commander in order to make their deck work, and it's just going to really pull things together that much faster. I've got a Muldrifter reprint at uncommon. This card's just a workhorse. For sure, you're going to be playing this if you're in blue, and you know, whether you're evoking it or just casting it for value, whether you're flickering this thing in, returning it from the graveyard, this thing just does a ton of work, and it really is incredibly dominant in Pauper. I mean, it's one of the best cards in the format. Scroll Rack is kind of a disappointing card for them to be throwing in here so soon after putting it into the list. Like, I don't know what the big deal is about getting that card in the list when now you've got this version of it. I don't know. We'll see how this plays out. We'll see how people feel about it, but I was under the impression that the list is supposed to be like a really exciting chance at some reprints that you don't get any other way. And instead, now it's just the premier card is being thrown in these packs just one set later. So this is a befuddling reprint to me. It's not how I would do it. It's probably an easy thing to do. Like, you've already got it all queued up and ready to go, but it's a surprising thing to me. Ancestral Blade, a +1/+1 for 1. Get to pass that thing around. Does come with its own body. I mean, it's fine for limited. Doomed Traveler. This is kind of similar to the Aristocrats deck in Pauper that I was talking about, which is actually Golgari. You can build it as black-white as well, and this guy sees some play in that. The spirit with flying is actually better than just the 1/1 without flying. But this one's generally not enough punch unless you've got some type of upside with the sacking. Captain's Call, getting 3/1/1 soldiers. We'll see what more support there is for soldiers, but not a particularly great value there. Cage of Hands. This one's tricky. You're going to be able to toss this onto a creature and then return it later when there's a better target. You're not going to be able to get it back to your hand if they sacrifice the creature, so you got to be careful about that. Sacrificing will just get rid of this card. There's no chance to respond once that creature has been sacrificed. This just dies essentially as a state-based effect. Gift of Paradise, 2 and a green. Enchant land. When it enters the battlefield, you gain 3 life, and the land taps for 2 mana of any one color. We'll see what they have for untapping. Cards like these tend to scale better when you have like a Arbor Elf, I think it is, the Seeker of Skybreak type cards that untap your lands or untap your permanents. When you can kind of pile a bunch of these onto a land, you can get some pretty crazy results, and that can be a lot of fun for formats like Commander. Archaeologist, Lagoon Mystic, another interesting bug commander here. 3 colors. We've got 2 in a 2/4 toughness. Traditionally, turtles do have a tougher exterior. And as long as he is tapped, other permanents enter the battlefield tapped. As long as he's untapped, other permanents enter the battlefield untapped. So, yeah, this is, I mean, it says life is not a race, but he's actually pretty good at racing, as you're going to be attacking, and then all of your opponent's permanents are going to come in tapped. And of course, you can play your stuff pre-combat, so it'll all come in untapped. And yeah, I mean, this is kind of a grief card. Generally, this isn't going to make any friends at the table, but some people really enjoy kind of griefing and making things cost more, slowing things down. Some people, that's just how they get their kicks. Let's see here. We've got another legendary creature here. For 3 mana in Gruul, we get a 2/2, and I think she's actually going to be related to one of our previous... Let's see what her actual name is. Tuia Bearclaw is what they're calling her. I don't know if she's going to end up having anything to do with... Blanking on the name. Let me know in the comments. The Bear Punch guy from Khans of Tarkir. That's what this feels like. Even the art kind of has a similar feel to it. But when it attacks, it gets +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the greatest power among other creatures you control. So kind of feels like, you know, if you've got a bear, then she hops on the bear and does the extra damage, is kind of what they're going for with the flavor. And it's going to be passable for a commander, potentially. It's not clear to me whether or not we're going to want the generic commander, just like whether it's better to have something like that or just 2 of the generic commanders. Not entirely clear. It's really going to depend on how grindy the games get, and whether or not like repeatedly playing 3/3s from the command zone is actually going to be that strong. This is another card that's going to go way down in value. Command Beacon. This one was originally in Commander 2015. You can sacrifice it, put your commander into your hand from the command zone, and that one's... I mean, I'm actually going to have to check and see how many of those I have. I'm curious about that. Just 3. It's just 3. Not too big a deal. Brago, King Eternal. This is another reprint. Flying 2/4. When it deals combat damage to a player, exile any number of target non-land permanents you control, and you can return them to the battlefield under your control this turn, making enter the battlefield effects incredibly strong. This guy can do a lot of damage, and, you know, if you're facing down 3 opponents, this could actually be strong enough to be able to fend off 3 opponents if you've got enough ETBs. Generally not going to want to turn these games into arch enemy, but, you know, sometimes you're actually able to, which can be a lot of fun. Very memorable when 3 people team up against you and you still end up taking down the table. Thrasios, Triton Hero. This is a brutal reprint. I know I have several of this card. And this is just going to absolutely plummet in value. There's even fancy new versions of it to choose from. And originally, I believe it's only available in foil right now. So people will be happy to get the non-foil for people that don't actually like their cards looking like Pringles. This guy at the stat line's a 1/3 for 2, and you can pay 4, scry 1, then reveal the top card of your library. If it's a land, you put it on the battlefield tapped. Otherwise, you draw a card. So really just able to sink a ton of mana into this guy. Can be part of all sorts of different just infinite combos where you're drawing your entire deck. And people often don't enjoy playing against this card because it is actually really good. Rings of Bright Hearth. Whenever you activate an ability, if it isn't a mana ability, you can pay 2. And if you do, you copy that ability. So this has tons of infinite applications. Things like Basalt Monolith go infinite with this. Now you're thinking, well, Basalt Monolith taps for 3. Well, you can't copy that, but you can copy the double untap. So you tap for 3, and then you activate to untap. Then you copy it. So it untaps the first time, and then in response to that other untap, you tap again. So you're actually getting extra mana out of it, getting infinite colorless, which, you know, something like Thrasios, as we just saw, you're just going to draw your entire deck and win. So that's the type of shenanigans that people are up to with this card. I've used it alongside many of my commanders. It's just a really good Magic card for commander. And either winning the game or just giving you just incredible amounts of advantage over time. For example, Krenko, Mob Boss, being able to tap and make tons and tons of goblins is incredibly powerful. And yeah, I mean, that's it. Like, this card's expensive and it's getting reprinted, so a lot of this stuff is basically going on sale for a while. War Room taps for colorless, or you can pay 3 and pay life equal to the number of colors in your commander's color identity to draw a card. I guess we'll have to see what the ruling on this is, if you can actually play this outside of Commander. If you don't have a Commander, is that 0 life to pay? Do you just pay 3 colorless to draw a card? And if so, is that something that any type of constructed format would be interested in? People have played like Miko Koro before. Yeah, I don't know. That's what when I see this, that's what I'm curious about. It's like paying 3 and some life to draw a card is fine, but like paying no life is more interesting. So we'll see what the ruling on that ends up being. Let's see here. Rakdos, this Lord of Riots. It's a showstopper. Lord of Riots, yes. So this is the one that you can't cast spells. You can't cast this spell unless an opponent lost life this turn, and he's a 6/6 flying trample, and creature spells you cast cost 1 less to cast for each 1 life your opponent have lost this turn. All sorts of possibilities with this guy. He was in the guild kit, which those have done incredibly well. I love those. I wish I had a whole bunch more of those. They are very, very solid, and people just enjoy the product. A lot of them have gone up. Some of them have kind of stuck in the $25, $35 range, but some of them have gone absolutely through the roof. And I love the fact that they had those special lands in them as well. That was a really cool touch, which I think provides a lot of the value. Null Caller, 3 and a black for a 2/4. You can pay 2 and a black to exile a creature card from your graveyard to create a 2/2 zombie. Just good value, and that's going to be a little bit of a workhorse, be able to just kind of grind things out and get extra value. Fallacy Reverent Medium, 3 a white and a black for a 3/4. We got a legendary creature here. At the beginning of each end step, create X 1/1 white spirit creature tokens with flying, where X is the number of tokens you created this turn. So basically kind of doubling up with tons of creature tokens. Could be fun for that. Timna the Weaver. We've got 1 a black and a white for a 2/2, again, legendary creature, this time with lifelink. At the beginning of your post-combat main, you can pay X, where X is the number of opponents that were dealt combat damage this turn, to draw X cards. That seems very strong, and it has partner. So that's, so far, one of the more exciting commanders in terms of keeping your color options open. having a low casting cost, being able to actually get that thing onto the battlefield in a timely manner, and also just a solid ability. You can potentially be trading life for cards, which, you know, as you get better at Magic, you learn that cards are more important than life. Vow of Torment, 2 and a black, enchant creature to give it +2/+2 and menace, and it can't attack you or a planeswalker you control. So you can go ahead and buff up one of your opponent's creatures and make it so it can't be attacking you and is much better at attacking your opponents. Furnace Celebration for 3 mana. Whenever you sacrifice another permanent, you can pay 2. If you do, it does 2 damage to any target. The 2 is a lot to pay. We'll see how kind of mana flooded these games end up being. Hopefully they don't have any type of, like, I don't think they're going to do any type of Armageddon effect. That would just be miserable. Promise of Tomorrow. Whenever a creature you control dies, at the beginning, you exile it, and at the beginning of each end step, if you control no creatures, you sacrifice it and return all cards exiled with it to the battlefield under your control. So basically, your creatures are dying throughout the course of the game, and then at any point, if you have no creatures during the end step, you're going to get all those creatures back. So you can play this before an attack step, and just really loving Seb McKinnon's art. I mean, what an absolute gift it is to have him making art for the Magic community, changing, raising the bar. I mean, just all of these spirits kind of going towards the light here. The way that banner accents everything, the use of color and the composition, everything about this is just masterful. What a tremendous talent. Again, Arkham Weaver, a human wizard for Mardu mana. You can pay Mardu and sack an enchantment to return an enchantment card from your graveyard to the battlefield. That is very interesting. There's definitely going to be some goofy interactions you can have with that in those colors. Form of the Dragon, I think, just got reprinted in mystery boosters. I'm sure some people will have fun getting that card back. Intangible Virtue. Creature tokens you control get +1/+1 and have vigilance. That card's seen some constructed play, and depending on how good these tokens end up being, could be a very strong card here. Inspiring Roar, putting +1/+1 counters on each creature you control at 4 mana. It's a bit much, but it does set up Populate and other mechanics, depending on how you're going to build your deck. And I think this might be the last one here. Arden, Intrepid Archaeologist, 2 and a white for a 2/2. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you can attach any number of auras and equipment you control to target permanent or player, allowing you to potentially cheat equip costs, move enchantments around from creature to creature. There's all sorts of possibilities here. This feels like a good printing. A lot of insanity that can happen on the battlefield, a lot of decisions to be making, and that type of chaos is part of the reason people play Commander, is to see all of the cool interactions that can happen. And yeah, we're right back to the beginning. So that was a long one. Hopefully you guys are having a great Halloween. If you're watching this the day this comes out, we're going to be going through all of the cards for Commander Legends, and definitely going to be doing a new cards for Pauper out of this. Or if there are any other videos or ways that you want me to break this down, let me know in the comments, and I will be happy to do that as we figure out some of the other type of videos that we're doing for the channel. Fast Effect, I really appreciate the support on, and we're just continuing to try new things to find videos that you guys enjoy. Thanks for watching. That is all for this one, but don't worry, there is a lot more. You can check out our older videos, and we're always putting out new videos from ELD's Time Vault Games in Bellingham, Massachusetts. If you want to help the channel, of course, you can like, subscribe, share, tap that notification bell so you can know the next time our new videos come out. Thanks for watching.